This is the best way to solo Axis and allies on the 2 or Less channel. Before we get going, may I mention that I make these videos in aid of a charity called Cure Parkinson's. You can guess what they're trying to do. There is a link to them below this video, one in the About section on the channel page. If you happen to have a spare dollar, euro, yen, yak or British pound, you can send to them. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. So, I made a video a couple of years ago now called the 4-Turn Game Plan. Great for solo play. And indeed, it has been great for solo play. I tend to play quite a lot of solo games or multiplayer games solo. With Axis and allies though, I think it requires more of a person's personality being brought into each of those powers. And the 4-Turn Game Plan, the original version of this, did that to quite some degree, and I've used it on more than one occasion. But this revision now brings in an extra parameter to it. I've slimmed down the wording by a degree on this, and I'm very enthused with how this is going to work for us. And we're going to be giving it a go on Anniversary 1942 setup. I'll get a copy of this onto a BGG in the Anniversary section in their files, 2 or Less name, and there'll be a link down there somewhere as well when this video goes out. What we're going to be doing is one of these powers, I haven't actually rolled the dice out yet, are going to be given a really hard job, because that's the way the dice are going to go. I'm for sure it's going to be that way. And I'm going to choose that power to follow through the entire game until we get to a projected win, which is, I think, is it the 13 titties in the projected win? And then after action report for all the rest of the powers. But let's go back to how this 4-turn game plan revised is actually going to work. Now, you're going to need to roll 3 d6s beforehand. The first 2 d6s are going to assign personalities in terms of their aggression and the type of equipment that they're going to buy, because some players, and in this case absent players, are going to have a personality where they want to go for broke and battle to the last and kill. Other players will be a little bit more timid, and some will be completely scaredy cats and want to sit back and hold on till it's absolutely perfect time to make an attack. Also there's going to be an equipment dice as well, which is going to be, say, do you want to buy lots of cheap infantry and look after your IPCs? Or are you one of these players that say to hell that it's going to go and buy everything big and expensive and see how that works out for us? So as those 2 personalities are reflected in a d6 dice roll for each of them, and then a small calculation from there would tell you how many attacks maximum they can make during each turn. The more aggressive the power is, and the cheaper equipment that they purchase gives you more attacks available to that power throughout that turn. There's a third d6 that we're going to roll, and this is the new inclusion that I slotted into this, which is going to be something that's called decision time. Because as you will know when playing live, and I know when from all my waffling and munging, and I can sit there and ponder and move for one power. If you're playing live like that, that's an absolute killer. So what I've got here is something called decision time. Again, it's a third d6 roll, and that will be roughly the number of minutes that a power can spend before diving in, making their purchases, and going to make their combat movements. So yes, it's blocked in as a 2, a 4, or a 6 minute thinking time. Being driven to make more snap decisions, you're going to make less or fewer optimal decisions, I would suspect. But optimal decisions don't always work out correctly. And of late, I'm beginning to wonder whether the old ideas that I used to say, oh, how do you play a game solo, always make the optimal moves for the power you're playing. Well, just make a move, see what works out, because you can discover some different things would happen, and you can have some great successes and some spectacular failures when you get things so badly wrong, as I often do when I'm making snap decisions, which often occur when I've been overthinking, and I just go, right, do something, and yeah, I can have a lot of fun with my complete cock-ups that do occur. So we go to the other side of the camera now, and I'll roll the first 3 dice out for the first power, and then you'll see how I can manage this throughout the 6 powers being played in Anniversary. So over here in front of us is this double-sided A4 sheet that's got all the information on that you're going to need to use the 4-turn game plan. We've got 3 dice, we've got an aggression dice, an equipment dice, and our decision time dice. Simply just roll those dice out and see what we get for our first power, that is going to be Japan. We've got a 3 and a 2 and a 2. So this is going to be fairly middly for Japan. A 3 on their aggression. An aggression on the number 3 says they're going to expand through skirmishes and redeploy to progress. Make of it what you want. This is the personality for that Japanese player. A big number 3 there for their aggression. Their equipment purchases is a number 2, which is purchases tend towards the most expensive units. That is going to be awkward for Japan. I love it when it's awkward. The more you have to work at an idea, the more fun you're going to have. So the number of attacks that they can make is these 2 numbers added together divided by 2. So 3 plus 2 is 5, 2.5, that's 3 attacks. However, there's a caveat down here on the sheet. If we're playing with the Anniversary, you add 1 attack to that. And if you're playing with G40, you add 2 attacks to that. So we've got 3 and 2, 2.5, 3, plus 1 is 4 attacks in the 1 turn. On the other side of our sheet is our decision time. And decision time is up here. And I've said it's rash decisions. I've got 2 minutes from when Japan start to them starting to purchase their equipment and move everything around the board. So a time of 2. That is going to be really quite awkward for Japan to work with. Expensive units, not too many attacks, but no time to think about it. I'm going to do all the other 6 powers, the remaining 6 powers, off camera. But we will play through 4 game turns with those attributes. These attributes will get stuck, 1 second, into me drawers along with Japan. And each time you pull a power out to play them, you will look at that first before you get going with the game. After the 4th turn, so the start of the 5th turn, we've got this chart here, which is for adjusting the statuses. You look at the IPC tracker, you've got a leading power, a second power, you've got the middle powers on the IPC tracker, the second worst and the worst powers, and you will adjust the statuses of the powers depending upon where they are on the IPC tracker. It means that the predominant powers will continue with their values mostly. They keep themselves being as aggressive as they were or not, but they get rewarded usually with a little bit of a boost to the type of equipment that they're buying, slightly more expensive units. And the worst powers, the most failing powers, will have to adjust their numbers in a big way and possibly even re-roll their dice. So let me just carry on now and get all the other powers rolled up, and I will see you in a second. Okay, a couple of things to point out before we look at the values that I've rolled. What I tend to do is put a couple of markers down on 5 IPCs, 9 IPCs, and 13 IPCs, representing those gaps of 4 turns. At the start of turns 5, 9, and 13, and presumably 17 if you get around to that later on, or is it 18? Can't be counting right today. That is when you would look at this chart here on the 4th turns, rather, this chart here on each of the 4th turns, and adjust those statuses of the powers. Those markers on my IPC tracker just remind me when we get there that is when we start changing things around. I also said that you can roll these out for all the powers in the game, whether it's 5, 6, 7, or whatever it's going to be. But you can, if you want to, just choose, say, to be playing the UK and use your own normal way of playing the UK and have these attributes assigned to the other powers. And you can also, I think, play this in an opposed game as well. If you got, say, a player, mentioning no names, but the funny lady knows who I mean, who's very slow at playing sometimes. She looks at the board as if she's never seen the game before in her life. So this kind of nudge in the right direction could be useful in opposed games too. Enough of that kind of waffling before I get myself into too much trouble with her. Let's look at the values that we've got. We mentioned for Japan earlier on anyway. They've got their aggression at 3. Equipment is quite expensive. So they're going to be skirmishing with expensive units. That's going to be difficult to work with. I quite like that. 4 attacks per round, but very little thinking time. 2 minutes. Ooh, we've got to work with those ones. The Soviets, they got a very similar role from what I remember from the last time I played this on camera, where they've got be fairly gentle, protecting their core, but expensive units. They brought a whole host of T-34 tanks last time round, and it worked out really nicely. It's never going to work out nicely again for them. I'm absolutely sure of that. But we've got some thinking time. 4 minutes. That should be plenty enough to devise what the Soviets are going to be doing. Germany, they got lucky. They got one of the best dice points you could ever get for Germany. They're skirmishing. They're going to go in for attacks and they'll be happy to sort of pull away if something goes a little bit wrong. They've got plenty of cheap units in there, mainly infantry units, which they'll be using as absorption. Hate that word. But you can purchase a few more expensive units out of those classes. It's not sort of absolutely tying your hands in a complete hamstringing way. 6 attacks per round. Plenty of thinking time for Germany. Not that they need too much. They tend to know which direction they're going in anyway. The UK, they're a fun one. We've got a 6 for their aggression. It's full on attacks, fight to the last. That's going to be really awkward for the UK to work with. I'm loving this. And but they're buying the middly priced units and the cheaper units with their equipment value, and plenty of thinking time for them to try to make this work. This is going to be difficult. And Italy, well, they are going to be an absolute nightmare, I think. Their aggression is a 5, so if they do retreat, it's frowned upon. But expensive units. How do Italy buy expensive units with the limited funding they got in this game? It's going to be absolutely awkward for them. Loving that. And 4 attacks per round, no thinking time, 2 minutes. Well, what's there to think about? We've said we're going to go for it. You're going to go for it. Italy are going to be fun to play. I quite like playing Italy. I know a lot of people don't, or it's not their favourite to play, but I do find them interesting, oddly, and I can't really think why. The US, finally, US and China, they're going to be fairly aggressive with middly to expensive units. That does quite suit the kind of thing that Americans would do within the game. But no thinking time again either for them. But they're just going to be piling in left and right anyway. So yeah, that's the values we got now. So I think for this, I will try as much as I can do to stick to the thinking time. You don't really need to have a stopwatch to guarantee down to the final few seconds of your thinking, because there's always going to be a time when a rash player wants an extra minute or two just to think about what they're doing. Or what I will say is that the time taken, this 2, 4 and 6 minute thinking time, that does not change when these ones do change. And talking of that, we are going to be following the Rash Japan for the entire game. I'll see you when we get that rocking and rolling. Okay, and here we are on with the Rash Japan. A little bit over 5 minutes later on. It does say 2 minutes of thinking time, which is what we applied, and went immediately into our purchases. We grabbed ourselves one expensive bomber. That cost us 12 IPCs, and a transport cost us 7, makes 19. A tank gives us up to 24. A artillery is 28, and a infantry up to the 31. Now, looking at those pieces in terms of our equipment, it's supposed to be expensive or tending towards the more expensive pieces. Obviously, our transport ship is a lot cheaper than a battleship or an aircraft carrier, but when you need a transport ship, that's the only expensive transport ship you can get. We've got a cheap infantry unit because we couldn't afford another artillery piece being more expensive than infantry. You still have to rock and roll around what the flow of the battles require, but we are tending towards the more expensive pieces. We have fulfilled our policy, our behaviour of getting more expensive units, and we got our 4 attacks flagged up. Believe me, getting the 4 attacks flagged up, doing those immediately after purchases, was one heck of a brain burner, but I did it without overthinking. I went straight through with these 4 attacks. Let's get a dice tray somewhere we can see it and start rock and rolling these battles out. Is that in shot down there? It certainly is. Just grab some dice. And we can roll our first attack into Sui Yan up here, which we've got 1 fighter which attacks at a 3, which will be on the black dice. And we have got 1, 2, 3, 4 infantry, which will all be going in at lowly 1s. I've got to rejig my mind, because the last time I played Axis and Allies, I was playing North Africa and all the values are entirely different. So 3s and 1s, trying to bash those 2 Chinese guys there in Sui Yan. And the 2 of the infantry have scored hits. Nice! So these 2 guys get knocked over straight away. They get their reply rolls defending at 2s. We give them some of my 2 lucky dice, as I call them. And lucky for reason, it scored 1 hit straight away. So one of those Japanese guys is taken out, but Xi'an has fallen. The next attack we're going to be doing, we go down into Hunan, where we have a bomber. I was going to say rolls in at a 6, that's a different dice entirely. Bombers roll in at a 4, and we have 2 fighters that go in at 3s. And then we have 2 infantry rolling in at 1s afterwards. So we got 1 hit off of one of those fighters. And then these 2 infantry guys with lucky dice roll in at 1s. And they score a hit. I told you these dice are lucky. So these 2 guys will get knocked over. In reply though, we will have the very famous Flying Tigers that defend at a 4 with fighters and score a hit. We stick with a lucky dice for the Chinese infantry at 2s and score a hit as well. Wow. So these 2 guys get taken out by Japan. These 2 Chinese guys get taken out. And because we've got on our aggression, which is a skirmish, we can attack in there. The behaviour, we don't frown upon retreating when the attack isn't very good. We've got to think about whether we continue with this attack. There is just this one unit in there for, well, it's American, Chinese, whatever you want to call it, into there. I think we got enough numbers to make that attack with the bomber and the 2 fighters. We can't invade Yunnan, but getting that one expensive airplane out of the way would be pretty good. So I think Japan are going to carry on with this attack. They got a 6 and they got, sorry, a 6, I'm doing it again. They got a 4 and 2 3s. I'm going back to North Africa values. And they all missed. Eek! So can the Flying Tigers do anything with their defensive roll at a 4? They can. One of these Japanese fighters is going to be taken out, and I think Japan will be thinking about putting off that attack. Indeed, yes, we are going to be putting off that attack. Let me just take one of those tokens out of the way for its fuel. We look now at the one into Fukain. We're doing an amphibious assault into there, so our battleship can roll in at a 4 and miss. Infantry artillery roll in at 2s. And score the 1 hit that we need. This guy is definitely going down. He gets a defensive roll with a lucky dice at a 2 and misses. So that wasn't too lucky for him, but Japan have now captured that territory, which is fairly cool. And we can now look at the final attack around this Indian Ocean area down here, where we've got battleships and aircraft carriers and fighters all contesting this one place. So, double checking my chart down here, we have 2 Japanese fighters going in at 3s, and their battleship is going to go in at a 4 on the red dice. Why not indeed? And the 2 at 3 have scored hit, one of them. And their 1 aircraft carrier, I believe it's a lowly 1 in this version. So lucky dice for that one. And it misses. So just 1 hit off of these guys. I believe they're going to be taking that on the destroyer, I would think. So in defence, the 1 British fighter defends at a 4. Misses. The destroyer defends at a 2. Misses. The carrier defends at a 2. Misses. And the transport doesn't get anything either. So that is okay-ish. I think the Japanese have got away with that to a degree. They'd hoped for a better shot on the second roll, which they are going to undertake, we believe. So let's get the battleship on the black dice this time. At a 4. Misses. We'll have the 2 fighters on red dice. Why not? They're on 3s. Score 1 hit. And their aircraft carrier will have a shot at a 1 as well. Give them a lucky dice. It scores a hit. I told you these dice are lucky. That's 2 off of these guys here. So in reply, we will have the 1 British fighter defending at a 3, at a 4 rather, get me worms right. Misses, and the carrier at a 2. It scores a hit. So, take the damage on the capital ship. I think that's, let me just grab a token from somewhere. 1 second. One of my world famous blowing up tokens. And these 2 guys get taken out, and the transport ship is undefenderable. I'm sure that's a word. That will be taken out as well. So that would be the end of all the combats that Japan are going to do. I've got a heck of a mess now of pieces being chucked down below me. Let me sort out all the non-com moves and all the tokens in the IPC tracker. I'll probably see you at the end of round number 1, which is going to be in about an hour's time, perhaps. Okay, we finally got to the end of turn number 1. A couple of markers up here telling us that we've got a balance of 9 victory cities each for the Axis and Allies forces with the fall of Stalingrad. We'll look at that in a bit of a closer proximity. Let me just roll that one out of the way and move us all over to the middle of the board somewhere nicely in shot. So, the Soviets acted after the Japanese, and with their slightly more expensive purchasing and a low aggression rating, they didn't actually attack anywhere. They just bulked up into Russia, but with T-34s and with their artillery pieces. It's not easy doing that with the Soviets. And indeed, when Germany took their turn, they crashed into the Caucasus. It took them 4 rounds to get into that with some pretty poor dice rolls all around, but they've got the Caucasus, they've got Stalingrad, they've got an extra victory city. The other attacks which Germany made was up there into, let me just move you over a little bit, was up there into Karelia. That was a bit of a failure for the German forces. Indeed, the Soviets still hold on to this factory. We had the numbers there, the dice rolls just didn't go nicely for us. But the dice rolls were spectacular up into Sea Zone number 2, where the major British fleet was. That was 1 roll. That was an absolutely superb attack for Germany. Wish we'd had that one on camera. And a great one actually for Italy later on. I'll talk about that in a minute. When we came down to the Brits, they have their number 6 aggression, expanding at any opportunity, etc. But with that expanding opportunity is not necessarily making completely suicidal missions. We had plenty of thinking time for both Germany and the UK, and looking at the attacks that they could make, well, there wasn't really any attacks that they could feasibly make, apart from back into Sea Zone number 2 and get rid of the remnants of that German attack force, taking out a couple of submarines in the process, and actually doing a strategic bombing raid on the German factory, causing damage beautifully. That was rather spectacular. But the idea is to attack any opportunity. If the opportunity isn't there, then you can't make those attacks. So even though it's an aggressive Britain, it's still got to be within the realms of sensibility, should we say. After that, we then looked at the Italian bashing, and again, they were aggressive, and they could make an aggressive attack into Egypt. They shipped some guys in from Libya, and a couple of guys came over onto some boats because the Brits had moved their destroyer out of there, and they almost got in there. There was an absolute spectacular dice roll by the Italians with 3 naked infantry going in there, scoring 3 hits. The Brits were fuming with that. There was a tank accompanying it and a fighter, but the Brits held on with just 1 fighter left. What they're going to do with that in a minute, I do not know. That's going to be for round 2 to find out. Actually, we moved back a little bit from there, one step to the British turn, because they purchased 1 IC, putting it into India. Now, the Brits putting industrial complexes into India can be a bit of a disaster if Japan can take it over, but Japan only start off with 1 transport ship. That stuck it there in Sea Zone 61 after moving some stuff down into this into the China campaign. It can't feasibly reach India. Yes, India can be bombed and hit with all these fighters, etc. But they've only got 1 Burma guy to move into there, and it would mean that if Japan attacked India, which they may well still do in their turn, any hits back by the Brits will go on to some really expensive Japanese units. And I have to think hard as to whether the Japanese would actually take that attack on and then move in just 1 guy afterwards. It's almost a sensible thing for Japan to do, but an expensive sensible thing. I'm liking the quandary that it's given to me. At the end of the round, it was just the aggressive Americans who, again, they couldn't be aggressive and move over from the Atlantic because they're waiting to get their ducks in a line there. But their expensive purchases was just 2 cruisers and a bombist. And over on the other side of the map, they have pushed themselves into Wake Island, taking out that 1 Japanese guy that's there. It's fairly advanced for the Americans for this stage of the game, but we think there are all the numbers and all the pieces in place to maybe attack Japan on turn number 2, or at least get some more of these islands cleared out of the way. So that is it for turn number 1. I will see you on turn number 2 when we start off with Japan in a short while. Okay, no shilly-shallying around. We're into turn number 2 on with Japan, and with their fairly expensive equipment making a buy value of number 2, we're getting 2 cruisers, 1 tank and 1 artillery piece. That's the 33 IPCs they got available for this turn. They are making just the 2 attacks out of the possible 4, but we think 2's plenty enough for now. And we think that even though that the Brits had plenty of thinking time for India putting that factory in there, we believe it was a dumb move. We can get that done, we think. We're going to put a couple of fighters into India. We're going to put a 3rd fighter into India over here, and this 1 infantry guy. We think it's enough to get it done. We're not entirely sure. We can't use the battleship for bombardment because they're not coming in off of an amphibious assault. We're going to take this 1 bomber and 1 fighter from Burma that we were thinking could have been involved in that, but we think we got enough. We're pretty sure. We're going to try and get into Hupei. Let's get these in the right place and bring the 1 bomber down from the Japanese mainland that can also get involved in the attack down there, and infantry artillery. We just don't like that 1 flying Tiger that's there. That's going to be pretty annoying. So let's just do the attack down into India first. Dice tray into shot, is it? Yeah, near enough. And we can roll this 1 anti-aircraft gun. It's a pretty important roll for the Brits here. They're going to be hoping for something a bit special. We give them the lucky dice. Why not? And it is entirely unlucky. So we can now roll the 3 fighters for Japan, all rolling in at 3s, and the infantry rolling in at a lucky 1. And this entirely missed as well. Oh, So the Brits, in reply, have a chance of knocking out some expensive units. Depending on what their rolls do, we give them a fair chance to lucky dice at 2s, and they've scored 2 hits. That is really, obviously, the possibility of that happening was there. It certainly was there, but to have scored 2 hits with our lucky dice, we can't lose 2 fighters. That would be absolutely devastating for our plans that were down here. It means the India factory stays alive if we... No, let's go with what we were trying to do. Let's get the 2 fighters out. We take the 2 fighters out. Yeah, I'm waffling now, aren't I? If we take the 2 fighters out of the way, the second round attack is 1 fighter, 1 infantry versus it. We can't do that. We've got to pull off. We've got to remove 1 guy, 1 fighter, damn and blast. It was that very poor roll from the aircraft in the first place. Could I have used some more bombers into there? Yes, of course I could, but we were thinking that would be done fairly easily. Obviously, we're wrong once again. So, I had 2 minutes of thinking time for Japan. I had plenty of time for the Brits. It happens. Over into Hupei, we have 2 bombists going in at 4s and scoring 1 hit. We have the 1 fighter that goes in at a 3 and scores a hit. That could have happened on the last round. And we have infantry artillery, lucky dice that are just tucked away in there at 2s and scoring 3 hits. Why didn't that happen down in India? I do not know. That was going to be the 3 Chinese guys that are in there defending. Before we get that, we have the 1 Flying Tiger defending at a 4 and missing. And we give the 3 Chinese infantry our lucky dice. And they all miss this time round. Yeah, this is why we play dice games, because we just get some absolute funny results sometimes. And so, yes, Japan will continue into Hupei. There's no way they're pulling back from here. Their 2 bombers go in at 4s. That's all we got to do. The Flying Tigers are going to be demised at the end of the round. We give them a lucky dice at a 4 in defence, and they score a hit. We can take that on anything we like, probably just the 1 infantry guy there. And Japan will take over and move into Hupei with their 1 artillery piece, and I'll sort out the reinforcements later on. Their non-com moves for Japan is going to be moving this fleet from 35 into 36 around the corner here, picking up these 2 fighters from a successful attack it was supposed to have been. And we don't think that the Americans are going to attack the Japanese mainland. In fact, they've only got 1 infantry guy that could potentially move into there. It's not going to happen. So we're going to bring the rest of this fleet from Japan Sea Zone 62 into 61 and transfer a couple of these tanks into here and maybe some infantry guys as well. But obviously with our expensive purchases, we're not getting enough units into Japan early enough, but we think we should be pretty good. And I might be bringing 1 spare fighter from this attack to meet up with this second carrier, which will be in 61 afterwards. So that's it for Japan. An absolute shame for them. Yeah, you can hear how annoyed I am with that India attack not working. I will see you at the end of round number 2 when all this has all been played out. Okay, we've reached the end of turn number 2. Crazy world. We are back now to the starting positions in terms of the victory cities, with the Soviets retaking the Caucasus. Let's just roll east to west across the board. Why not, indeed? Can't think of any reason why we shouldn't do that. And do the AARs for all the powers here. America got their aggressive boots on and hit Iwo Jima quite bravely, really. They had some air support going in there, but with just 1 infantry that could possibly land in there. And fortunately, the sole Japanese guy there on the Iwo Jima island managed to miss everything. And the Americans had parked a whole heap of air into Wake Island. It's kind of like safety in numbers idea. I think Japan could attack them on next turn. Possibly it's going to be a brave Japan if they were to do that because of the amount of air that's there. But you never know your luck when with Japan, and with 2 minutes of decision time. Talking of 2 minutes of decision time, let me just carry on my major whinge from down there in India. Yeah, I got it wrong. I put in, was it 3 fighters and an infantry unit, thinking that would be enough. I could have, should have, would have used the bombers if I'd had more thinking time. I used those going up into Hupei, or at least one of them could have reached the India attack there. Yeah, yeah, it's really hard, this 2 minutes decision time, and you're going to get these crazy things happening. Talking of crazy things, let's move along to the Caucasus, where Germany had, I think it was 4 or 5 tanks in there, some infantry, and the Soviets one-rolled them. It was a must-do attack, even though they are quite a passive power in this game. You cannot have Germany on your doorstep building equipment to go back in and bashing your capital with. Plus, of course, with Germany having Caucasus, they could come down here and threaten Persia and India, which is now actually getting bulked up a little bit. The Brits have got their one fighter that's come back over from Australia. We were hiding it away for a little while, but that's complete by the by. So the Soviets one-rolled Germany in the Caucasus, losing, I think it was just 1 artillery piece themselves, or was it 2 artillery pieces themselves? It was a cracking good dice roll for them. Not so good again for Germany up there in Karelia, trying to make that attack work, get a factory out there, because obviously the Caucasus wasn't available. There wasn't enough equipment down in the south to make an attack into Caucasus again. And once again, the Soviets hung on valiantly up there. Germany made one further attack up into Sea Zone 2, where I think it was a 2 British cruisers and 1 destroyer, something like that, with some transport up there. And Germany were forced to pull off, losing 1 submarine and 1 bomber, I think, as well. And 1 fighter was limping back home after that attack. It might even have been 2 fighters, can't remember now. But the craziness continued with the aggressive Brits, deciding, because they have an aggression value of 6, there was an opportunity to hit France. It was a big, brave attack. They smashed themselves in there with some infantry artillery and used their fighters to support that attack, and briefly held on to France. Italy have retaken it back again, losing, I think it was 1 or 2 tanks in the process themselves, but Italy are an assumingly aggressive power. And also the German factory's been hit. The Brits and the Americans scoring beautifully with 2. It sounds like I'm biased towards them, but I'm just biased towards funny dice when they turn up. But yes, knocking out that 1 IC, that's now a big problem for Germany. But because Germany are buying lots of cheap infantry, we think that it's not an absolute disaster for them. The Italians as well, they've come down into Transjordan, loading across from the Balkans and from their mainland as well, just to be annoying for more than anything else. But 2 infantry guys in there, they're going to be defending at 2s each. The Brits have got to think about how they deal with them. Plus, Germany have invaded into Egypt now. We've only got a couple of guys down here to do something about it. So that could be a problem with all these picking up all these 1s and 2 IPCs that Germany would love to get hold of. And the Americans, well, they couldn't reach France to reinforce the Brits up there or to retake France, but they have gone into North Africa now. They're sitting there in Morocco, Algeria. Is it Morocco or Algeria in this game? It's Morocco and Algeria in this game. So I think that's about all. That's about everything that's happened so far for the 2 protagonists in this game. And as I said to you, these decision time restrictions now, as mixed in with the purchases, with the aggression and the amount of attacks that they can make, it really has made some fun, crazy turns in this game, despite all my whinging about my playing in India. It's cracking fun. If you want to give it a go, definitely give it a go. I'm going to carry on with this game, and I'm going to record the same amount of footage as well. But that will all happen in video number 2, when we start off with turn number 3, and again with sticking with Japan, what they're going to do versus this American incursion, and do they try and battle against this Indian factory? I do not know. I'm still going to give myself that 2-minute thinking time for them and see how it works out. So enough waffling. I will see you in video number 2, turn number 3, coming up sometime shortly. Till then, be cool.